All right, we're talking today with Army veteran and SWAT team leader Todd Lamb, and Todd's current business is PureLife Organics. Before we get to talking about business and entrepreneurship, tell us about what your experience in the Canadian Army was all about.
Uh, it was a mix of everything. I was a ground pounder in an infantry unit, over in a very, very cold part of Canada called Petawawa, Ontario, which
Oh,
is the home of the Special Service Force. And fortunate to serve there. It's a very high speed base. It's where
mhm.
a lot of the soft teams are located, and but it is renowned for nasty, nasty winters. So,
Yeah,
you
what's
know,
like you're talking like minus 40 at least in the winter.
yeah, like minus 40 hour minus 40. I don't know what that translates into, but when we were doing fire team drills, and my fire team partner's face froze. His face literally froze. It turned black and his cheek was falling off. Like we're talking just horrible, horrible conditions. But an experience like none other. I enjoyed it immensely, and it was the foundation for really the rest of my life.
Yeah, and how many years were you in the Army?
I did a basic engagement, so just under 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does Canada doesn't have mandatory military service, does it?
No, it doesn't. Should,
Uh-huh.
but
What's the
it
size
doesn't.
of the Canadian Army? Do you know?
Oh boy, I'm not sure. It was in the several hundreds of thousands at one point, but I don't know what the size of it is today by any stretch. I don't know if we're growing or shrinking. It depends on the government of the day, really.
Right. Yeah. Same with us. So, tell us a little bit about your transition when you got out of the army.
Yeah, so it was kind of a bit of a delay. Like I'd always wanted to be after I got out, moving into law enforcement. That took a bit of a process. Really interesting, to be honest. A lot of recruiters felt like it was necessary to have a bit of a break between my military service and police service to really dial back sort of that, particularly around the infantry and those types of trades in the army where you're a little bit more combat focused.
Hmm.
To just sort of a reintegration into the very slow paced civilian life. And
Yeah.
so I had a bit of a break in between where I was commercial diving out on the west coast of Canada. And out of there, that's when I started my policing career. I did general duty for a bit. I spent 7 years as a canine officer, and out of that transitioned into SWAT, and eventually took over as the team leader there. So, a bit of lag time in between the
Hmm.
transition, but certainly applicable skill sets in terms of discipline and, being able to, use your mind to solve problems and serve. Ultimately, that's what I've always felt compelled to do.
Right. And how much time did you spend in law enforcement?
Just about 20 years.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So, had you always been an entrepreneur, or did this come about as a necessity in healthy living? Or
It didn't. It was something that I knew in high school. I just had this bug. I really liked advertising. I really liked good ads. I've always been, drawing dumb little inventions that, and even, finally I had one drawn where, and I'm sure this has happened to every entrepreneur where they're like, I came up with.
okay, so like as a kid, you're talking about like you had this really cool idea or harebrained idea and you thought of it and you maybe even drew something out. And
Oh
then like
yeah.
years later, you see the actual invention come to fruition. You're like, oh man, I thought of that. But I don't know how many
Totally.
times that's happened to me as a kid because you're a kid, you don't have the ability to act on ideas or do anything. But numerous times.
Yeah, it's
doing that
just,
as a kid.
and creative brains, and what I discovered, being in the service, is there's a multitude of highly creative people, and for whatever reason the circumstance is, you don't get the ability or chance to act on it. And for me, I was a young father. I was 19 when my daughter was born, and my wife was 18, and I learned through high school, as I was, starting to gear up towards what I wanted to do and become, and all of those things, I really was compelled to serve. And so, that with young family, I moved into public service. Started with the Army, obviously, then from there into policing. But I always had a burning desire to run a business. And so as I progressed sort of into the 8-9 year range of my policing career, and with the emergent um, of or the emergence of the internet, and being able to monetize ideas far easier than ever before in history,
Oh yeah.
that I started doing a few things that my first crack at it was I made a margarita machine out of a big cooler and a carburetor. And I'm like, because we had a house with a swimming pool, and I said, no swimming pool is complete without a margarita maker. So
Yeah.
I made this homemade one, and I said, if I want that, somebody else wants that. And so I put the plans for $5 a pop on eBay, and we made, $3,000 that summer. And I told my wife, I'm like, okay, this interweb thing works, I'm gonna figure it out. And it just took off from there, right? So
And so you didn't actually make them for people, you just sold the plan
yep.
electronically or via email
Yep, that
or
was my
PDF
first
download?
my first I had a PDF file, which were these miraculous things in 2005. But yeah,
Took 20 minutes to download a document.
yeah, totally. You'd pay me the $5, and you'd get the link to the plans, and you could print them off, and away you went. So and my brother and I photographed the whole thing with a digital camera. And so it was a really nice, easy to follow things. And people would send me the pictures of their homemade margarita makers
Kidding.
with amazing paint jobs on, like it was the coolest thing. But
Really?
that really flipped the switch for me. I just got hungry from that point.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So keep going down this road. So you get really your first taste of entrepreneurship was more or less a success, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. And that's
And were
never usually the
you still a
case.
police officer at that time?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so that was what led me. So on the job, you have to have permission to do anything outside. So that was a hobby. And I said, I'm going to figure this thing out. So I got permission from the department to pursue my passion in fitness, and with a friend of mine, his passion in martial arts. And so we created a series of products around fitness and jujitsu, and put those online. And he started a very successful jujitsu channel called Submissions 101. And so we built these products kind of based on those platforms, where you could get, you could see all of the free stuff, but we'd have even better training inside of these products, and started doing that. But very, not really understanding the critical component of the sales process. We just kind of put them out there. And he was on the job at the time as well. Well, he didn't start there, but he is now. And you know y- you you just don't understand all of the moving parts at that stage. So it was very, a naive attempt at just kind of creating this secondary passive income. And then the world, the online world, really started to speed up and
Yeah.
change. And
Now,
so that.
did you know that like that model you guys were using where you put out a bunch of free stuff and then have paid packages and things behind that? Did you just kind of make that up yourself? Because that's a
It
very successful model
I know.
even today.
It,
How's
you know,
business?
and his, the Submissions 101 channel was, I mean, man, like, to be putting videos online was no easy task because the speeds to upload, you'd start uploading a 2.5 minute video and it might be done by the next morning kind of thing, right? Like it was a laborious process, and cameras weren't as good as they were now. So building that channel, we had 125,000 followers back in 2006, 2007. That was a big channel. It
Wow.
was the real deal in the world, of online marketing. And so we just thought, well, if people want this free stuff, what if we do some really cool paid stuff and use this process to show them where to download it and pay us through PayPal or whatever. So we just kind of systematically started to figure these things out, which led to conversations with people who are in the health and fitness space
Mhm.
who were just, you know, absolutely crushing this industry. They were kind of the forefathers in the space, around, they'd started kind of 2004, 2005, and eventually through these processes we ended up connecting with them in a much more significant way.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about what you're doing now, which is in Pure Life Organic. So hold on, we'll be right back.
Sure.
Okay, we're back talking with Canadian Army veteran and police SWAT team leader Todd Lamb with Pure Life Organics. So Todd, before the break, you were talking about some of the success you're having with uploading some of the jiu-jitsu videos and some other things. You and one of your business partners, and you started connecting with all these making all these fitness connections online, and it got really
Yeah.
big. Um, so what happened then? Because this is a really interesting part.
Yeah, so I mean, just to reiterate that, I made the smart move in 2007 to get written permission to do it, and that's a critical piece. When your primary job is service,
Mhm.
and you're doing a secondary employment. And as I started to connect with these people at live events, at masterminds, I made some connections that could really 10x what we were doing. And so, I got connected. We launched a product, in the fitness space, really that spoke heavily around, the bravado, the service side, which, generally for guys like you and for me, we would never buy that kind of stuff, but the general public obviously likes that stuff. And it went wildly successful, in the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And eventually the department came to me and said to take it down. And I said, but here's my permission letter. And they said, we don't care. We don't feel like what you're doing today was what you asked to do in 2007. I said, well, it says self fitness online. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so they made life extremely difficult because they didn't like the messaging, even though it didn't mention my department, didn't mention anything that I do. They just sat around a table and decided that they didn't like the way that it was being done. They didn't like the messaging. And we all know what happens when a group of people sit around a table and decide they don't like something, right?
Yeah,
That's
and so this was this a policing policy or not necessarily a Canadian police policy? What was the driving force behind it?
behind them not liking it.
Trying to shut you, yeah,
Well,
trying
I
to make you
think
quit.
when you it it becomes about jealousy and about, people not wanting you. They don't mind if you do okay. They don't like it when you do better. It really knocks people's egos down, and they want to teach you a lesson. And who do you think you are? And, there's it's an we've all experienced this in military careers, policing careers. Unfortunately, oftentimes people eat their own, and that is, an unfortunate characteristic in the culture. We should be lifting each other up, supporting each other. You know, we don't make a ton of money in policing, certainly not in the military, particularly on retirement. These things, you know, it's not this bed of roses that you float away on. You still are cracking at it, trying to make a buck. And oftentimes guys have deep rooted jealousy, and they don't want their peers to succeed. And it's, you know, it's the crab in the bucket analogy, and it's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's definitely an issue in the military. We've discussed a number of times on the show. You have to be, not only just for security reasons, but if a boss in the military finds out you're running a business on the side and they get jealous, it's going to create
Yep.
problems. But also, if you're in a leadership role and your subordinates find out that you're running some kind of business on the side, it can cause,
Oh yeah.
command leadership issues. So it's
Yeah.
very, very touchy. And you should be asking permission or get written permission, some kind of written permission from the JAG or the CO. But
Yeah.
then you run the risk of, if you ask permission and they say no, then you're dead.
Yep.
Is it more of a
and
beg
and
forgiveness
then
thing?
and
But
then you have to make the choice that I did, because they weren't going to be, you know, this was going to go to, well, they started launching disciplinary investigations into just every aspect of my business, and all were unsubstantiated, and I welcomed it, because I sat on the strength of that letter. um, but they're pushing you toward a choice. And
mhm,
you know, I finally said in September 2015, which is 5 years ago this month, I told my wife, I said, it's time to go. And it wasn't because um, they they gave me the push that I'd always really wanted, that I don't know that I would have taken on my own.
mhm,
But what they demonstrated is, A, they didn't have my back like they said they would,
mhm.
and B, it was time for me to step up and believe in myself, you know,
Yeah,
and utilize all of those skills, you know, in terms of discipline, in terms of self motivation, in terms of leadership, and really take this thing to the next level. And man, I had some sleepless nights for a week. You know, I walked away. I was a supervisor, sergeant's wage. I was, you know, $130,000 a year, $2 million pension, probably by the time it's all said and done. You know, if you live that long, and I walked from it because I decided to believe in myself, and not be brought down, and not be around negative people that didn't support, you know, success. And it
yeah.
was some sleepless nights, my friend, let me tell you. But
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, you
Um,
know,
they don't mind you struggling with a business, but when you became really successful, like better
oh,
than them, then all of a
they
sudden,
want they nobody cared. I'd done this exact same thing for almost 8 years. Nobody cared when it was, you know, $1,000 a month. But you know, when we had a seven-figure launch, some people's, you know, ties got a little bit tighter. You
yeah,
know what I
probably
mean?
not
So
just from the employer, but friends and family react interestingly sometimes when all of a sudden
yeah,
you
you know,
that
I was,
overnight success.
you know, totally,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
So
No,
so you started
powerful.
going down this road and it kind of pivoted or segued into Pure Life Organics. I mean, obviously you can see the relation there, but talk about what happened after you went full time with this and eventually got to where you are now.
Yeah, so you know, it segued into a few more releases of some fitness products, but staying connected. And then we had one where we kind of, um, you know, my wife had been in a car accident. She's a police officer as well, same department. Um, she'd been in a car accident, and um, had very serious back injuries as a result. Always athletic, you know, but as we both got into our 40s, the weight started to creep on. So I did a lot of research into organic remedies, and eventually arrived at this morning breakfast tea, followed by a diet protocol. And she ended up losing over 54 pounds, without almost no exercise. And so I said, okay, well, let's try it on a few other people. So we had 4 case studies, and one of my guys who drove, a bread truck for a living, which I think would be the hardest job in the world for
Snowing that
losing
freshly
weight.
cooked bread all day.
Yeah, he ended up losing 84 pounds, and then I'm like, okay, we're on to something. So we launched that product, and it ended up doing just beyond what I could have ever even imagined. And I imagine, having not walked out and believed in myself and just letting this product to never come to fruition, my life would look very different. Now
Yeah.
we're you know a multi-SKU digital and physical company with the ability to, from our all of our guys offers, we contribute to the Wounded Warrior Project. That's our main charity. And on the organics and health side, we contribute to Airseed Tech, is a drone reforestation company, and then we also can contribute to Eden Reforestation. So we're able to do these things that are going to have near term impact on people's lives. And
Mhm.
so it's just,
And
it's
I don't want to
been
get sidetracked here,
extraordinary.
but people are actually using drones to plant trees now.
So I would want to talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
This is why I'm
Sounds
so excited about it. If you look up drone seed, Airseed Tech, Flash Forest, we're in behind primarily Airseed Tech as a R&D partner for what they're doing, but they can plant trees 8 times faster. And you see what's happening in Oregon right now.
wow.
Um, they need this technology, and it's the first time technology has been on the side of replanting versus harvesting. But it's there in order to make an impact. There's 5 trillion trees that need to be planted throughout the world, and so it's big business, and it's coming in
Yeah.
a very
That's
rapid
crazy.
way, for sure.
Can you go into a little more detail with PureLife Organics about are you almost 100% online retail sales on your
Yep.
own website versus Amazon or some other channels,
Yeah.
and what you've learned through that whole process?
Yeah, so Amazon's a very limited channel for us. All of our um, sales are 100% online. We have no brick and mortar anywhere. We have an e-commerce site, but we use a sales process called direct response, which is, that almost that 3 a.m., you know, vegetable juice type, direct response type
Uh-huh.
sales process, because it's emotional, it's educational, and of course, at the end of the sales process, you want your customer to purchase the thing. And so that's where we've been most successful. My business partner is a very good copywriter, and we're able to utilize that in a way to drive a high volume of sales. And then we, you know, we, I used the example in an earlier discussion. We kind of plan our business in reverse, the same way you do a hostage rescue, and that's from a successful outcome. And so I built my business that way, in terms of customer retention, customer experience, making sure everything is, you know, geared towards them being successful, so that even though they've come in an emotional buy, they don't automatically um, have buyer's remorse, because we treat them so well, and they're, the products that we continue to offer them really optimize their health. And that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is that it has to do the thing that it says it's going to do. So
Yeah. Do you have good customer retention?
we do. Yeah, we have good lifetime value. Um, it's incredible what our team does to provide a good experience. We don't always get it right,
Mhm.
but we certainly strive to do that, and it's critically important for us to make sure that, the way I think about this business is if I haven't done my job well enough, means that if, Pure Life Organics falls off the map today, nobody cares. And I want to be that business that is like, man, I hope these guys are always around because they deliver all of these things that just make my life so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so talking with the military community crowd out there that's
Yeah.
looking to get into entrepreneurship or they're struggling to get started, those kinds of things. What kind of advice do you have for the budding or the entrepreneur wannabe out there who might still be locked into the military or another job, trying to break free, work the business on the side?
Yeah, I mean, I would continue to crack at it to the point where it almost feels like it's gonna go. Like, you feel very comfortable in your security around your obligations to your family. That's an important one. um, you know and once you sort of feel like, okay, I think that there's something there, you've made the connections, you're putting yourself out there to make all of those connections in your space, and really building a good foundation. Once you've done that, then leverage that ability that you've found within yourself. I mean, you put people through a basic training course. It really tells you what you're made of. So many more fall away than succeed at, um, going into a high level of service. And it really gives you that foundation from a personal standpoint about how to it's an up and down ride, but I think people that have, um, you know previous service, or even, that ability to stay and remain disciplined and focused, are the ones who will be successful. And that's what exists within the character of people who serve.
Yeah, when you were first getting started, coming from a military law enforcement background, what kind of blind spots did you have that you didn't realize at first?
I didn't know how to run a business.
That's a really
I
broad picture of looking at it. Yeah. So
Well, I didn't.
exactly.
I just thought, create thing, sell thing. That was it. I didn't know
Yeah.
about, you know, what it means to track numbers, what it means to have week over week, what you should be looking at, what metrics mean, what KPIs were. I was just I was I am way more on the creative side than the analytical side. But I had to learn it, and I had to be open minded to understand that these are the things that drive success. I mean, there's no point in selling something, A, that people don't want, or B, that costs more to sell than you make. It's critically important to understand numbers, and the role that they play in terms of growth of a business.
And were you able to become a numbers expert, or did you realize that was a blind spot or a weakness for you and you brought somebody along that could do that for you?
Yeah, and I brought somebody along. I knew what needed to be tracked. I knew that if I sold this on the front end, and that they took, we all talk about average order values and lifetime value and all that. I know I needed that. I needed somebody to get into Excel or sheets and do the formulas and all that kind of stuff, and be able to navigate, the platforms, to be able to pull numbers and then have integrity in those numbers, so that I felt comfortable, because I was for a long time just running blind. It seemed like, I spent some money and I got a little bit more money back. So, it all seemed to be working,
Hmm.
but, that really is no way to be successful and grow a business. You have to absolutely bring people on when the time is right. And you'll know, because it's so hectic, it's so chaotic, that, it's just too much for you to do all things.
Yeah. And that's typically what's referred to as the entrepreneurial trap.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you want to try to do everything because you're trying to get a business off the ground. You
Yeah.
don't want to bring somebody in and pay them to do something that you're not even sure is going
It
to work yet.
It is, it's hard, and I've done all things. I would do whatever it was I was doing in the day, and then I would stay up until, 1, 2 in the morning, doing customer service, and making sure that, it all worked. And then eventually I added one person, because every minute you take away from, that 5% of things that you should be doing that are gonna create exponential growth, is a minute wasted for you, where you can find, very willing people either to do it at next to no compensation, or free, until, there's lots of people that will help, lots of people.
Yeah. So, um, well, so we're getting towards the end of our time here, Tom. If you're talking to some of the folks still in the military, or a military spouse who's really
Yeah.
wanting to make that leap into entrepreneurship, what kind of things come to mind when you're talking to them from perspective of somebody who's a lot farther down the road than they are?
Yeah, I would say, educate yourself. Like, do a bit of market research. Find out what the addressable market is for that thing that you want to create. I mean, and then understand who you want to sell to. Understand what they read, what movies they like, what video games they play, what cars they drive, how many kids they have. Just try to really get inside their head, because that's what's going to allow you to sell your thing to them. You're going to be able to have that conversation right inside their head, and tell them why they need it. And then, from a financial standpoint, it's going to take some risk. And, you know, we talk about failure all day long in the world of business. And I've never really seen it that way. I've always seen it as, a point of learning. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't work. Let's,
Hmm.
let's pick up and move forward. There's nothing, the only people, and so cliche, and I hate this, but the only people I've ever seen fail are those who quit. That's
Yeah.
it. You know, I, I I shouldn't be doing probably what I'm doing, but I just refuse to quit. I will not die. I won't be outworked.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. And surround yourself with positive people. If somebody is joking with you, and those jokes are negative, or they're, you know, talking, you hear that they're talking about you behind your back, cut them out of your life. That includes family.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things I did. If you were not supportive, if you did not uh, help me feel uplifted on a daily basis, I cut you out. That's
Exactly.
it. you
Not
know
worth it.
nope.
Absolutely. Awesome.
No, it takes away.
Well, hey, Tom, I really appreciate you sharing your successful entrepreneurship story. Look forward to seeing Pure Life Organics, your future success, and
Thank you.
thank you for sharing your golden nuggets on veteran entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I would encourage everybody to jump in. It's incredibly rewarding.
Okay, one thing.
Yep,
Pure Life Organics is at purelifeorganics.com. How do we find you?
it sure is. Yep, purelifeorganics.com. And if you come check us out on Instagram at purelife.organics, you can find our subject matter experts who I make them do a whole whack of content on things, injuries that I have, bad back, bad knees, how
Yeah,
to stretch, all the things. So you'll find all that good stuff there. So my body's pretty beat up after a life of service, I'll tell you.
great. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for sharing your golden nuggets. And like I said before, look forward to your future success.
Thank you so much.
All
Appreciate it.
right. Take care. These two veterans are Oscar Mike.